everybody, and welcome to our TeachMeet this afternoon. Lovely to see so many of you with us. Not a busy day, I'm sure you've all had, so really appreciate the time that you spend with us. As Emily said, I'm going to speak in first, then I will pass over to our wonderful guests from Numicon who are joining us today. Got lots to get through, so let's get started. So, as I said, my name is Rachel Wood, and I am the Key Stage 2 Maths advisor here at Twinkl, which I've been doing for about 2.5 years now. Prior to that, I was working in the classroom for over 18 years. That was in Key Stage 2, worked in 2 different junior schools, so it was just Key Stage 2 focus. And most of that time was maths lead and senior teacher. So lots of changes, lots of different things coming and going, but really, really exciting. So what we're going to be doing this afternoon then, so looking at manipulatives in Key Stage 2, I'll be looking at a general side of things from my point of view, and obviously then on Numicon specifically for our second half. So what manipulatives are, some of the beliefs and the assumptions about them. I'm going to touch upon briefly the CPA approach. Could be a whole teacher on CPA, then be a little look at that, and some of the theory behind manipulatives. As always, effectiveness is the answer to everything, is the key. It's how something's used. So I'm going to show you how I hope they could be used in the classroom, where not to use them. Also going to show you a beyond Key Stage 2 case study. I'm going to take a pause then and pass over to our guests. Then I'm going to share some resources from Twinkl that we've got here, and then we'll do questions together, as Emily said at the very end. So let's get started. Manipulatives, what do we mean by them? Up on the screen, there are some that you may be familiar with. You may have them in your classroom right now, or they may be things you've used in the past, or maybe things you want to use in the future. So I'm going to go through a few. So we've got place value counters at the top left. Obviously, we're focusing on Key Stage 2 primarily this afternoon, and I would always say keep those for Key Stage 2. If you're in a primary school, I'd keep those for Key Stage 2 because throughout the session, think about how we use them. They're ones that, in a way, could cause difficulty for some children, because obviously they're all the same size. We look at them, they've got the different colours with different numbers on them, but if you don't have an understanding of what a 1 or a 10 or a 10 million, what it actually is, some children might find it a challenge because they're all the same size. They're really useful. I use them all the time, but they need a sort of understanding of what a number represents. To the right, we've got multi-link cubes. They are the opposite. You can see clearly that you've got 10 cubes. It's greater than 3 cubes. If I've got a 10, I've got a greater than a 1. So you can physically see how a difference in size. They can be used for counting, can be for your grouping. They can be used for a variety of different things. Number rods there. We've got the Numicon in the middle. Our guests will share much more about that later. But that's right in the middle there. Got digit cards. I used to use them all the time. Print them off, laminate them, cut them up in little envelopes, and have them for so many different lessons. Because I was talking about manipulating, using things, creating things, giving children an actual physical card to hold or create numbers, create different digits all the time with them. It's hands-on as well. You might be working on portage numbers, for example. Giving them cards, make a number. What have you made? How many thousands have you got in your number? Who's got a greater number? How many tens are in your number? We often also give them 2 sets. So they didn't just have 0 to 9, they had 2 of everything. So they could really think about the use of number there as well. And also we want children to enjoy maths, and giving them a set of questions, obviously we might need to do that sometimes, but getting their own numbers, making own generation of numbers is far more hands-on and active. Similarly, you've got the dice there. Now, obviously, dice you can have up to 6, you can have 9, 12, 20. Having a dice and to physically roll in the dice, you've got they can create numbers, they can create questions from it, and think about subitizing. So many different things you can do with that dice. And also, you walk into a room and you see children playing a maths game, and the mathematical talk that comes with it, you can almost sense that buzz. I've seen many lessons over the years for maths. You go into those silent rooms that, unless they're doing a test, of course, you think, oh gosh, I don't want to say anything. But once you go in, then you've got that buzz, you've got that mathematical talk, the conversations between the children and the staff. And if you give them a manipulative, often they're more likely to talk as well, because, oh, what have you got there? What are you doing? What number's that? So digit cards, dice, great physically making a number, engagement, collaboration. 100 square, laminate it, put it on the table. So useful, because some children might understand what they need to do, but actually their understanding of number and the actual calculation might be holding them back. So knowing that they go down a level, they're adding on 10, looking for patterns with times tables in it, and actually all just actually counting on with their 100 square. It's helping them, supporting them doing their work, their calculation, whatever it might be. Counting straws. Also, it could be lollipop sticks, could be anything you can group with an elastic band. Because, like I say, in place value counters, the 10, it's a 10. If you've got a group of 10 counting straws, they can clearly see I've got 10. You might have children who are really finding place value a challenge, so working on 10s and 1s. I've got 1 10 and I've got 1 1. I've got 11. I've got 2 10s and 1 1. I've now got 2 lots of 10. I've got 21. But they can physically hold it. They can really understand what this means. Similarly, bead string, physically moving the bead along. Watched a wonderful video we've got here at Twinkl looking at percentage, and they had 100 bead string broken up into lots of 10s, and what's 25%, what's 55%. So really thinking about what it actually means and physically seeing it and physically moving makes such a difference. Dominoes are put on there. Dominoes obviously it's a game in itself. Subitizing, that's a 6, that's a 1. That I've been to count it as looking at it. Though it's key stage 2, you might have children that you're teaching who struggle with that, playing a game of dominoes, or they can actually think with dominoes that are touching, multiply them, add them. What have we got? It's not just playing the game. You can think of so many different games with that. And then we've got base 10. Hopefully used across the school. Going back to place value counters, they're all the same size. Base 10, they're not. You've got a 1, you've got a 10, you've got 100, you've got 1,000. They can actually, they're all proportional. So they can really see what's happening. Great understanding of place value. I know obviously it's quite big on the table, but it's so crucial to make sure I've got my 10 ones there as equivalent to my 10 rod. So we're working on column subtraction, addition, for example, really thinking about that. They're exchanging and regrouping, physically doing it with those equipment. I'm sure there's lots of others you've got as well. Remember, anything you can physically manipulate can be used. Okay, so why use them? Manipulatives can help engage with mathematics, help pupils engage, but they are just tools. It's how they're used. So don't just think, right, get out the base 10, that's it, answers sorted, or get out the place value counters, whatever it might be. They've got to be used effectively in how they're used. There should be a clear rationale for use of manipulative. Why is it being used? Not as an afterthought or an add-on, thinking, oh, I've got to use something, let's get those out of the cupboard. Haven't used them for a while, they'll be okay. No, they need to understand why they're using them. Now, hopefully your school has a progressive curriculum that's been mapped out, so everything's been introduced and comes to you in Key Stage 2 and they're familiar. But they really need to discuss why they're doing it. What's the reasoning? Why is it being used? I always get asked, oh, well, no, they're year 5 and year 6, should they be using manipulatives? So we're going to have SATs coming up soon. I go, oh, they should be temporary, yes, and as a scaffold, but until independence is achieved, not a particular age. And we're introducing new concepts all the time. So manipulatives can be used for new concepts and also to support their learning. So please use them across the board. Don't think, oh, they're 10, they're in year 5, they shouldn't be using them. It's supporting their learning. And also the research, a little bit of research, show that children need hands-on and visual hooks to understand new concepts in maths. So if it's starting their journey, they're in EYFS, so learning to count, or looking at algebra, first time in year 6, something visual and hands-on as a hook to understand that new concept. They need it. And if we remove that, as that quote says there, from their experience, we are actually denying them the most powerful tool of learning. We all learn by doing something, hands-on, physical, manipulative, not going straight to the abstract. Leads me on to effectiveness. You need to be effective at how something's going to be used, not just use it and that's it. So studies have shown manipulatives can enhance the learning and understanding of children. However, children need to be shown how to use them. So a couple of questions for you to think about. Can they use the equipment they've been given and relate to what they're doing practically? Or are they just mimicking how the equipment is being used rather than understanding how it is used? I was thinking I'm very guilty of this myself at the very start. Obviously, lots of curriculum changes over the years. And the first time we were obviously using place value counters to show column subtraction, my visualizer, everyone, all children were watching, and it was all lovely. They were doing it themselves, but I was thinking, did they actually understand what they were doing, or were they just copying me? So it's really important that you use the vocabulary all the time, use the mathematical talk and explain why something is happening, not just doing it. It really needs to be explained. If it's not used effectively, it can have the opposite effect, the detrimental effect on learning. They fidget with it, distracts them, actually confuses them even more. So really make sure there's a clear rationale of why it's being used. So important to remember, this is why it's really key, that manipulatives are concrete objects. Understanding how they represent concept requires abstract thinking. So going back to some of the first ones, looking at the idea that that little counter word means 0.1. Well, it's abstract thinking there. So think about why it is being used. It's a physical representation of a concept. It's not the concept itself. So it's being used as a representation, it's a physical representation, but it's being used to represent a concept, not the concept itself. As everything, children need time to make the link between the concrete material and the abstract concept they represent. So I said, hopefully, during Key Stage 2, they've been introduced different things as they're coming up. So they're progressive curriculum. But if you're doing something brand new, really give them time to find that relationship. So I'm going to touch upon this, conscious of time. So CPA can be a whole TeachMeet itself. There is a link on the reflection document to one of our CPD documents on CPA. I really recommend you having a look at it if it's something that's interesting or it's new to you. Because you might be an ECT, you might be a teacher for lots of many years. The idea of the CPA is so key. So CPA approach is a system of learning that uses physical and visual aids to build a children's understanding of abstract topics. So concrete, as I say, it's the physical using for new mathematical concepts. So you might be in year 6 looking at algebra for the first time, looking at a percentage, looking at fractions, whatever it might be, they need that physical thing first. Then we move to pictorial. So it's a visual image of that manipulative. But obviously there's a time we might have both together. So you might need the physical and an image together. I can't do one, they can move on to the other. And then finally you go on to abstract. But obviously you might have some really high flyers and really able children, but they still need to go through that process because they might be able to do lots of questions, just get it all right, but actually ask what they're doing, they really struggle to explain that. So giving them the concrete, giving them the pictorial, gives them that foundation, gives them that deeper understanding to move on to the abstract identity independence. So there's a really light touch on CPA. I said, look at that document. There's lots more on there. Okay, so this is an example here. So obviously it's got partitioning at the top here, standard partitioning, 13,452 new partitions there. So some children might be able to do that straight away. Some children might do it, but don't really know why they're doing it. So you've got part whole model there, very familiar. Children can draw it on their whiteboards. You might have it laminated, but they can draw it themselves and put those counters in the correct part of the part whole model. And obviously some children, that might be a real challenge, thinking of what does that 5 mean? What does that 4 mean? What does that 1 mean? What have I got? Some children might be able to do it straight away and think, well, how else can you partition that number? You use the counters in your little pot in front of you on your table and flexibly partition it. How else could it be done? What have you shown? So you can see how the same concept can be taught in a variety of different ways. But physically moving those counters, putting them in the correct place and explaining what it is they've done. Do a little pause from me at the moment. I'll show you a little video. Hopefully it works. Lots of concept videos we have on site, which are wonderful to explaining different concepts for children, all the way from Key Stage 1 up to Key Stage 2. And this shows how short multiplication can be done using our place value counters. So I'm going to pause myself, so it's an echo, and hopefully play our video.
by the single digit. Let's complete the calculation 2,413 multiplied by 4. I'm going to use place value counters alongside the written method. When we partition the number, we have 2 thousands, 4 hundreds, 1 10, and 3 ones. Our multiplier is 4, so we will multiply each part by 4, starting with the ones because that is the smallest value digit in our number. 3 ones multiplied by 4 equals 12 ones. We know when we have 10 or more in one column, we need to regroup. So let's regroup 10 of these ones counters into one tens counter. This leaves us with 2 ones in the ones column. Now let's multiply the tens. 110 multiplied by 4 equals 4 tens. With the regrouped 10, we have 5 tens altogether. Now we need to multiply the hundreds. 4 hundreds multiplied by 4 equals 16 hundreds. We regroup 10 of these hundreds into 1,000. This leaves us with 6 hundreds. Finally, we multiply the thousands. 2 thousands multiplied by 4 is 8 thousands. Add the regrouped thousand to make 9 thousands in total. We can now...
I'm going to pause it there at the end so you can see how, see on the left, we've got our abstract. Now we've got our pictorial there, but you can actually physically do that on their tables, show why they're doing something. So why is that one under there? What does that one mean? Some children might just say, I don't know, I was told to do it. Now think of actually what it's worth. So physically doing it, so we get a whiteboard, just draw it on, or you can print off the grid, they can put it on there. Physically doing it really shows what they're doing. So you've got the abstract and you've got the concrete pictorial there to show what it is they're doing. Okay. Just briefly, I'm going to talk about this, the Beyond Key Stage 2 case study. The link is on the slide as well. I think this is really interesting to me because obviously we do so much work, Key Stage 1 and 2, really thinking about manipulatives and concrete and everything to do with there. What happens if they leave us? What happens after us? They go off to year 7 and we don't hear from them again. And it was really pleased to see then who did this study, a school in Halifax, that are using place value counters, not just for low attaining students, but across the ability range. So it offers an alternative standard algorithms, but as a way of understanding what the standard algorithm is really doing. So that video I just showed you was classic there. You had what's happened, the abstract on the left, standard written method, but what it actually meant, what actually happened. And also open-ended questions. Not looking at questioning today, I could do other TeachMeet on questioning as well, but often with manipulative, you have those open-ended questions to get deep understanding. But we recommend looking at that link because it's really fascinating, a study that they do with Key Stage 3. Okay, let's move on. So just before I pass over to our guests, a couple of little quotes here that really show the support behind using manipulatives. This is 10 years old now, and I hope we've moved on from here. But Joe Bowler said that proficient problem solvers frequently use representations to solve problems and communicate results. The representation is a critical part of mathematical work, and it is often the first thing proficient problem solvers do. It is rarely taught in classrooms. So I hope in 10 years we've moved on from that. But that's so key there, proficient problem solvers. I've taught many a child, I've got a few year 5 boys in my head who were incredibly quick, incredibly able, didn't want to draw a diagram, thought, oh, I can't draw a bar model, and I don't do that. I say, draw a diagram, draw a picture. I had a pen in my hand when I was teaching all the time. Draw something as proficient problem solvers. And that's not just children, it's adults as well. I think breaking down that barrier of, yes, everybody, all students should be using concrete, manipulatives, pictorial representation to explain their thinking is so key. And finally, my little bit. Caroline Hamilton from the Maths Hub, lead for Whiterose Maths Hub, says manipulatives and pictures should be offered to all students to aid conceptual understanding. There's a focus to encourage verbalization of the maths children are doing. So once again, all students, and encourages that taught. However, Manipulatives should not become a crutch to enable a student to carry out an operation they do not understand. Manipulatives don't give them the answer. It's how they're used. They don't understand the concept, what they're trying to do. Manipulative isn't going to give them the answer. It's supporting what it is they do, supporting their thinking. And I'm going to pause it there. And I'm very excited to pass on to our guests. Let them introduce themselves for you from Numicon.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rachel, for that brilliant introduction. You could see Sean and I nodding as you were talking. So, hi, my name's Louise Pennington. I'm the I'm head of professional development at Oxford University Press, which is the home of Numicon. So I lead in everything where we need professional development, but particularly in primary maths. In my spare time, I'm a council member and a trustee for the Mathematical Association, where I lead the professional development committee. And my background, very similar to you, Rachel, primary teaching with a particular focus on maths and special needs. And then I led the special needs teaching service for a while before coming to work for OUP. I am also, I need to say, a Numicon author and was the series editor for Numicon Essentials. And I'll hand over to Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Yeah, so like Rachel too, so I also have background in teaching. So I used to be a primary school teacher. I'm commissioning editor working at Oxford University Press. I kind of started off with teaching and then moved over into educational publishing for probably more years, I think, than I can count now, which is a little bit just a bit ironic because I think most of those have been working on maths products too. I think 10 years on Numicon now too. So yeah, it's really nice being able to share some of that with you today. And just to go through what we were going to touch on, so we're going to have a look at why using manipulatives at Key Stage 2, so a bit more just on the evidence there and some of those key manipulatives that can help. A bit more of a focus on Numicon pieces and number rods, seeing those in action and having a closer look at them and how they can be used to unlock some tricky topics in every year group. So particularly in Key Stage 2, when we're looking at fractions, decimals, percentages, ratio and proportion, negative numbers, algebra, whole range. So we can touch on some of that for you too. And then go on to some top tips and some resources to help you. So we just, Lou's going to kick off.
Thanks, Charles. I wonder where my next slide is. So just to build on what Rachel was saying before about the use of manipulatives, just to really hammer the point home that they have been used for centuries. There's tons of research from developmental theorists around why they're a good idea to use. So Piaget, Montessori, Bruner, for example. And also the link between talk and manipulatives is really coming through research and has done for a while. So just a few of the names there in terms of theorists and researchers who've looked at manipulatives and talk at the same time. And then two bits of research I wanted to just flag up. One is the Nuffield Foundation, which I thought was really interesting around for us to be able to communicate mathematically, we need those representations first, as Rachel was just going through the CPA approach. And that the Hebert and Carpenter research is lovely. And they talk about that only by looking at similarities and differences can we construct relationships, so that what's the same and what's different questions are really important. And also peer interaction whilst using manipulatives, so that talk and manipulatives with your peers means that students are more likely to construct the meaning that the teachers intend. And as you said, Rachel, around that, more able students grasping things, and it makes, maths more accessible to children. I think for me, just here, we all know that Key Stage 2 curriculum becomes abstract very quickly. We need to utilise that CPA approach to ensure understanding and age remembering. And obviously, we all know around children's memories, the schema is built better and stronger if we can put similar ideas together. So that happens when manipulatives are used and children are talking, then they're able to recall that knowledge more flexibly. Thank you, Sean. Next slide. Feel like Chris Whitty now in the COVID briefings. Just pull out one of their quotes, really. To think about mathematical ideas, we need to represent them internally. And to do that, you have had to have done it practically yourself first, or at least talked about it. So it's, again, bringing that CPA approach to life. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, so as Rachel said at the beginning, so we'll come some of those key manipulatives to help at key stage 2. The place value counters we had a bit of a look at, and base 10 you'll probably be really familiar with using as well too, particularly helpful for place value and dealing with those larger numbers. Some of the resources you might be less familiar potentially using at key stage 2 are those Numicon pieces and the number rods, or also called quiz and air. When you use those, plus the pegs or a similar thing that can fit nicely into those Numicon holes, you can model and explore some really complex ideas at key stage 2 that you might not expect. The structure of these resources mean they're really ideal for being able to show the connection between related concepts. So, for example, fractions, decimals and percentages, ratio and proportion. And as Rich was saying, it's just a case of really knowing how to use them for this and what the right tool is to use where. And we've got a great new resource to help support with that as well too. So Numicon Essentials helps with that, includes PowerPoint lessons, modelling videos, interactive whiteboard software, and that interactive whiteboard software has got a full range of digital manipulatives on it. It's also quite helpful. Rachel was talking about the CPA approach, and as a bridge between the concrete and the pictorial. The software is really nice for being able, you've got your kind of visual, your pictorial images, but you're also able to manipulate those. So it acts really nicely as a bridge.
Yeah.
And all of the examples that we're going to go through some examples now too, all come from Numicon Essentials, where we've been really using those number rods and Numicon pieces, Numicon shapes as kind of the key manipulatives there too. So give you a bit of insight into some of that.
Yeah, thank you. And just because all three of us have said about children needing to be familiar with the resources that they're using, so this is just really quickly, just you probably know things about Numicon already. You probably know that it makes the number system visible and tangible, that it's, it's base 10 basically in terms of our number system. So it's effective in working with number patterns and relationships, helpful for decimals later on, which we'll kind of touch on really briefly. But also I think for me, the odd and even relationship, so we can see the technical term of the chimney or the sticky up bit or the hat on the odd numbers. And also the odd numbers are in 2 colour groups, so the blues and the greens, blues and greens for the even numbers, and the cool colours and the warm colours for the odd numbers. It's really important children can see that because colour is such a helpful memory trigger. They're weighted, so a 7 and a 3 weighs the same as a 10 if you're looking at pan balances. And as I've just said, the base 10 obviously. But there are things you might not know about Numicon, particularly of its use in terms of key stage 2. So we're just going to give you a few examples really briefly. Thank you, Sian. And then obviously the quiz and air. So number of quiz and air. I think for me, these open up and do so much more for children moving through key stage 2, but they have to be familiar with them again. So I think one of the key things is they're great for familiarization with patterns and pictures and finding them how they fit together. So you can see they do make a staircase like the Numicon does, but also there are differences and similarities between them. So I'll look at a couple now in terms of patterns. And that's obviously a growing and a shrinking sequence there, which is quite nice. This is one of my favourite bits. Did you know there's different colour groups in quiz and air too? So obviously Numicon has the odd and even with the warm and the cold colours. Quiz and air has seasons. I call them seasons. So this is about scaling relationships really. So you can see the reds, that's the autumn colours. The greens and blues are the spring colours. That the yellows and the orange is the summer, and then you've got the black and the white. The universal one is white, and then the special one with the black, which if we give them values of 1 through to 10, that's 7, and it's quite a special number. So there's those colour groupings within quiz and air as well. And I think the beauty and power of quiz and air lies in the fact that they are smooth, and so they don't have a value on their own. So when you pick up one of the rods, you can't tell what it is in relation to the others, which means that sometimes they're tricky to use if you don't know how it all fits together. But just this bottom image here shows you really quickly how you can change the value of any of the rods and the others then have different values. So it's about relationships between the different rods. They are brilliant. Obviously the centimetres as well, so that the black one is 7 centimetres. Did you know they displace cubic centimetres of liquid as well? So a little 1 cube displaces 1 cubic centimetre of liquid, and they are very scientifically weighted. The little one weighs 1 gram. So they're beautiful resources, quiz now. If you've got them in school, please get them out the cupboard and start using them. Thanks, Sian. And because of that, we've all said you'll need to know how to use them. We have a lovely familiarisation document, which splits this up into kind of Key Stage 1, lower Key Stage 2 and upper Key Stage 2. So if you're wanting to get to grips with Numicon and the number rods and your children haven't used them before, they're not familiar, or staff haven't, there's a lovely familiarisation document on our Numicon Essentials, which will give you the, you can have a little trial and so you can get in and have a look around at the end. Thanks, Sean. So just a few examples. We know we're tight on time, so just thought we'd flash up a few examples. So this slide here is really important because it starts to look, we've just delved into fractions first. We thought it was one of the key things that people ask us about. Can Numicon be used for fractions? And so I think it's important here to think about the fact that we have progression both in concepts and manipulatives in terms of how we use fractions across Numicon Essentials. This is a Year 3 example. It uses Numicon pegs and the Numicon, as Sean mentioned before, and it enables children to get to grips with subtracting fractions. So the Numicon piece represents the denominator and the pegs represent the numerator. And so you can easily see how moving the pegs out, we can demonstrate subtraction in a really practical way so children get to grips with that and can understand it much more readily. Thank you, Sean. And then obviously that would move on through into Year 4 with adding 2 or more fractions. So here you can build and extend understanding using the same model, which is really important. We're linking those ideas together. And then another one is another Year 4, so it's bridging beyond the whole there. So we start to get into whole and then mixed numbers and then improper fractions. So it's quite nice that we're using the same models here as we're working through. Should be Year 5. But yeah, then the Year 5 example is multiplying the unit fraction. We know this is quite tricky for children. So again, the same model, so making the link between the manipulatives and the concept, but the number line comes in here as well. So you've got the C and the P and the A all together. And this is a different way of working. So moving through the pictorial into the abstract ways of working. So you can see the notation and you can see the number line work there as well. Just a really quick whistle stop tour of how that might work. Thanks, Sean.
And then we've actually just got a video here as well,
yeah.
From as an example from that lesson.
One third multiplied by 4. What is multiplying by 4 the same as doing? It is the same as adding the same number 4 times. 1/3 multiplied by 4 is the same as 1/3 add 1/3 add 1/3 add 1/3. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make a model of this. 1/3 add 1/3 add 1/3 add 1/3. How many thirds do I have in total? Move my pegs to simplify my fraction. I can see that I have 4 thirds in total, or I have 1 whole and 1/3. I notice that, like when adding fractions, the denominator does not change when we add more parts through multiplication. The whole has been split into 3 equal parts. The denominator stays the same. We have multiplied the number of parts. 1 part multiplied by 4. The numerator changes. I know that the denominator is 3 and the numerator is 4. So I have 4 thirds in total, or 1 whole and 1/3.
I think it's really important for us to say that Numicon Essentials has at least one video with every lesson, so it models that key thinking and vocabulary alongside the use of manipulatives. So that's really important, I think, to share. And then the next slide, here we have, you can see how Numicon, well, the Cuisenaire rods here, the number rods, are helpful for understanding equivalence in fractions, starting with the year 3 lesson, where it's building a fraction wall, looking at eighths. So obviously you've got eighths, whole, half, and quarters there, but then it moves on to the same model, but using a different way in terms of year 6. So that we're moving through to use number rods to find common factors. So it's a tricky image there, but really important children get the opportunity to build and to see those. And then also using these to simplify fractions as we get into year 6 as well. Really nice. Again, you've got the modelling, so you've got the concrete experience, the pictorial representation of that, and then obviously how that works in terms of, you know, a pictorial representation with a model as well. Thanks, Sean. I think it's important for us to say here that using the right manipulatives enables children to make those connections between the concepts really easily, to build those schemas, and this has been a key focus for us for Numicon Essentials. And this last little bit here is around the use of, we did say we'd come back to decimals, didn't we? So this is looking at using Numicon with the orange baseboard, which is the one shape magnified, so you're able to see, you know, hundredths. It's been split into 100 parts there. Really important key concept in year 4 to start to work in that way. And here you can see that the model shows the children that you can easily link fractions and decimals and percentages together there. And then the other side there, the square numbers. I will just have a little laugh here because I didn't realise square numbers made squares till I was at university. As in, I hadn't been taught, and I'd just been taught the notation and working through squared numbers in that way. And so this is a lovely activity where children are actually exploring whether numbers can make squares using pegs on a baseboard. And if they make a square, then they realise they're square numbers. So I think that would have been brilliant for me when I was in primary school, because I got all the way through my whole school career without realising square numbers actually made squares. So it's really important they get these opportunities to do, you know, practically do them and to model those themselves. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, and then just really briefly to think about negative numbers in algebra. I know, Rachel, you mentioned algebra as well. Negative numbers, I love this model and image here. So it's looking at the size and magnitude of numbers, and either side of the 0 is really beautifully laid out here in that pictorial model. And I think that it's really important for children to see what negative numbers look like and how they're growing, but in the opposite direction. And then obviously algebra. So this is beautiful way of using the rods to find out, you know, solving a 2-step equation.
And just going to tell you a bit more about Numicon Essentials that we've got now too. So we've got Numicon Essentials as a whole school subscription. Using that IWB software as well is included with it. Won a BET award as well too. But so that you can make sure that the whole class are able to keep up throughout and not need to catch up, because they have that depth of understanding where it really counts by using those manipulatives for the concrete right at the beginning, and those key number concepts right where it counts. It's also really useful. It's got kind of a lot of flexible use for intervention as well. I think if you were just to use it even just for fractions across the school, it's a really powerful tool in that way. Use those models. Like we said, it's got it maximises a very small set of core components. So we've got the Numicon checked pieces, the number rods, the baseboard, and pegs, or suggested where alternatives can be used there as well too. Please also mention that orange baseboard too, which is you can buy it, but it's also, just to try and save a bit of money, it's also available as a download that you can print too. There's over 100 mastery lessons for ages 5 through to 11 on those key number topics and tricky topics. Really thought a lot about the lesson structure as well, and using that I do, we do, you do approach to really help bring out the understanding and secure things for children there too. We've got fully editable PowerPoint lessons with pick up and go, easy to read teacher notes. So just picking out things like the key misconceptions, key questions to ask, assessments, things. So yeah, just having bits that you need at your fingertips. And as Lee said, having a modelling video, at least one with every lesson. Sometimes those key ideas need to be broken down into a couple of points, so you might get a couple of videos for those. And each lesson also kicks off with a talk task, which was designed with Voice 21, who are a leading oracy charity. So real experts in being able to develop oracy skills and help to create these tasks at the beginning. You can see there kind of a bit of a range of different types of talk task, but just as a way of just being able to really get children thinking about the vocabulary that they're going to need for that lesson, bringing it back to mind, or also that explorative talk can be really important at the beginning, particularly in exploring ideas, and really helps bring that out and through. We've got currently, so Numicon Essentials is £290 for a 1-year subscription. And we've got a special offer on as well to the Twinkl customers as well too. So 20% off Numicon Essentials subscription and apparatus, and that runs right up until 31st of March. So we can tell you a bit more about how you can access that if you want to too. We've got some top tips.
My top tips. So I think, again, this builds on what Rachel said earlier. Using, considering which manipulative to use, when and why is really important, because they expose different things, different ones. So it's looking at what I want the children to see in this lesson and notice, and therefore which is the best one. So, for example, if what you're looking at is something to do with odd and even numbers, then it's much better to use the Cuisenaire, much better to use the Numicon than it is to use Cuisenaire, because you can see the odd and evenness of numbers using Numicon. My key thing is around using manipulatives with every child, as Rachel said, across Key Stage 2 and beyond. I think for me, it's about every time you have a new concept, they should be used. And also, if you're looking at the reliable proof and justification at the end of something, they're really helpful to structure children's discussions and conversations there as well. I think it's really important as a teacher to model narration when you're using those manipulatives, because you've got to model that thinking process out loud, which obviously is part of a child, part of their thinking process and their talking process. And then obviously when we step in with probing questions to check their understanding and to think, ask them for reliable proof or to check and encourage reasoning. And the bottom one is really important around, as I've just said, and we've mentioned all of us in terms of, more able students who just shoulder shrug, I just did it, I didn't need the stuff. But it's about, as you said, Rachel, isn't it, about what an able mathematician does, and what they do is they convince and justify, and they offer that reliable proof. And sometimes manipulatives are what those more able students need to be able to do that, rather than just support children's learning. So for me, it's everybody all the time, and the culture in our classroom has to support that. So it's not just seen as a special needs crutch or what you use when you're stuck. Actually, manipulatives make harder maths more accessible for all of us at whatever stage of learning that we're at. So that's my top tips, really.
And just to touch on some of the resources to support your journey with manipulatives. So we've got a brilliant range of resources on Twinkl, and Rachel will tell you a bit more about some more of these too. But there's resources that fit beautifully with Numicon Essentials, from supportive display resources to resources for extra practice, and that collection there is just going to continue to grow. We've also got the exclusive Numicon Essential sample lesson that you can access on Twinkl, and with the links and things that Rue's going to be sending around at the end to be able to get hold of that. Realised it would be good to be able to have. I thought it would be nice having the example that we actually shared as well too, with the video and the manipulatives and things too. So that'll be available for you as well too. And on the opening slides of those, you'll also find that information about being able to access the discount, and also a free 1-month trial as well too, if you just want to explore the collection. Really recommend going in and having a look. If you have a look at some of those familiarization activities, lots of supporting resources and things for you there. Oxford University Press. So we've also got some really nice free resources from the Oxford Mastery Framework. So there's a talk for maths benchmarks, which we'll also send a link to. So they're all about being able to develop oracy and great ways to do that and implement that throughout your school. There's a nice section in it about using manipulatives within that, which is really worth a look at. And there's also the modelling for maths benchmarks, which we're work in progress, so they should be coming soon. So probably end of March, beginning of April, and those are specifically sort of in a similar way, like specifically focused on using manipulatives as well. So yeah, we'll send a link around for that too, if you also want to to be sent those. And then I think we can just hand over to Rachel because you had some more supporting resources.
Thank you very much for that. That's wonderful. Thank you. Yes, just to finish off, I touched upon our videos. We've got Twinkl. These are all hyperlinked as well from the presentations. Hopefully you can go straight to the link, also the reflection document. Our concept videos, this is the homepage, set them for all areas of maths. They're great for students, for children, but also great for as CPD for TAs or new teachers, or if you're thinking, oh, I'm new to year 6, have a little look of how it's taught. They're really, really helpful. I've got them for all areas of maths. Budgets are tight. I've been maths lead for many, many years, and I asked to buy something and I was told no. If you want to download, we get lots of things we can download straight from Twinkl. If you want to download and laminate, maybe get some parents in to be laminating people and trimming. Great fraction walls, arrow cards there, lots of different things, lots of the mats for various things. So if you haven't got the actual shop bought one, so you can also download and make your own from Twinkl. As Sean Louise wonderfully said, we've got lots of things on site with Twinkl related to Numicon. These are just a couple here, but we've got a variety, and there'll be more and more as Sean said on site. There's one that addition within 50, and you've got times tables there as well. Might be in year 4. And you've got a few children already at the MTC. There's a different way of representing it. It might be that thing that makes that light bulb moment to go. But there's a couple of resources on there. But there's plenty on site as well. Our interventions, you might be familiar with them. They're same-day interventions, idea for keep up, not catch up. They're designed for each step. If you might have a TA in your room, if you're lucky enough to have a TA working with a group of children on a particular step, they go through how to teach it and also show what manipulative to use, what representation, what imagery to use. So they're really, really handy. All the way up EYFS, all the way up, looking at breaking down each concept. You might follow different schemes. We've got a White Rose sorting documents, Add Ivy into Mastery, which are wonderful resources for various aspects as well. As I mentioned at the start, looking at CPA, there's the video link. They're going through a bit more detail. Number lines have been touched upon obviously by our guests at Numicon, but they're brilliant. Obviously used across the board. There's a lecture document there from CPD for that as well. And that is me finished. Thank you so much, and thank you for our wonderful guests from Numicon. It's been lovely to do this together. I think all of us on the same page, helping children get better at maths and also enjoying maths. My biggest thing is about having children enjoying being in a maths lesson. I think making maths fun, making it engaging and enthusiastic, and however we can do that. I think physical, hands-on, visual lessons are so wonderful. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and for our guests at Numicon as well.